you right after the meeting. And the webinar will also be recorded for training purposes, but your video image doesn't show on the recording, just so you know that. During the presentation, you will all be muted. Should you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please send them through the Zoom chat to Anouk van Praag, who is the co-host of this webinar. And all of the questions will be collected and answered right after the presentation. And hopefully we'll have enough time to answer all of them. Any remaining questions will be answered by email after the meeting. And we're presenting from various countries, so we really do hope that our internet connection will remain stable. But if we should have a problem down the line, please bear with us, be patient, we'll try to solve it as soon as possible. Our first speaker is Obina Onunkor. He is the Health Systems Strengthening and Research Specialist with i+solutions. And Obina coordinated the implementation of the blockchain pilot in Kano State. He is assisted by Choma Nwuba, who is our country representative of Nigeria and project manager. And we also have a contribution by Jelle van der Ploeg, managing director of the blockchain company Unchain. And Jelle has been focusing on adding business value to supply chains and business networks since 2015. And he co-founded Unchain in 2017. And has since then brought multiple ideas from concept to real-life solutions for various companies like Vattenfall, KLM, and obviously i+solutions. I wish you a pleasant and interesting time with us, and I now give the word to our moderator, i+solutions CEO, Ed Munchen. Ed, to you.
Yeah, thank you, Annette, and welcome everybody. Yeah, I think this is a topic very close to my heart. Our credo in i+ is impact by innovation, and we believe blockchain can help to innovate supply chains, to overcome the many challenges like counterfeits, not having reliable data, so getting all the actors reporting to their own systems. So I won't tell more now. I will get back to you during the Q&A. So I hand over now to Choma. Sorry.
Okay, everyone, welcome to today's webinar. For the webinar, we'll be having a number of sub areas. The first is that we'll be looking at the background and the goals of the blockchain, then how we went about the setup of the blockchain pilot, what our results were, and then we'll take your questions and answers. Next slide, please. Okay, so the background and the goals. So I'll be giving a brief background of Nigeria as a country. Nigeria is located in the western part of Africa. We have a population of about 200 million people. We have about 36 states plus the Federal Capital Territory. And for each state, we have about, all the 36 plus one state, we have about 774 LGAs. And within all those 774 local government areas, we have about 40,000 primary, tertiary, and secondary health facilities all around the nation. Next slide, Annette. Okay, all right. So as a precursor to the blockchain pilot, we had a project that i+solutions implemented with a number of other partners that was funded by the Global Fund. The Nigerian Product Supply Chain Management Program launched this project in 2014, and the aim was to integrate the parallel supply chains of the different program areas, including TB, malaria, family planning, immunization, and HIV. The integration process itself didn't include a very crucial commodity, which is the essential medicines. And it also excluded its availability at the last mile. As a result, there was need for us to look at how to bring in the essential medicines program into in the integration process, as well as to see how we can ensure that there's end-to-end visibility for this essential medicine program across all the 36 plus one states in Nigeria. In view of this, we approached the Federal Ministry of Health through the NPSCMP and came up with asked for their support to pilot the blockchain process in one of the states, which is Kano State. Next slide, please. Okay, so Kano State is located in the northwest part of Nigeria, and it has one of the most, basically the robust DRF program in Nigeria. Kano State in itself has about 900 health facilities, and it has a turnover of about 6.3 million per year. The DRF program, manages about 1,000 products as it is, and it is currently being understudied by other states in Nigeria. And very importantly is the fact that it has very strong commitment from the state government. At this point, Obina, my colleague, will take it up from here.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Like Chioma said, Kano State has a lot of good things going on their DROF, but there are challenges, and notable among them is the absence of end-to-end real-time data visibility. And this is partly because at the level of the health facilities, the logistics management information system is entirely paper-based. At the level of the state, where they have the central medical store, they use M-Supply for inventory management, but when you go down to the lower levels, the LMIS system is paper-based. Also, there is a lengthy procurement process. In the DROF, basically, health facilities procure commodities from a state-owned central medical store. And this takes about 3 to 6 working days to conclude. And this increases the likelihood of having stockouts at the level of the health facilities. In the next section, we will explain in details the entire procurement process of the DRF. Also, there is an issue of bounced checks because health facilities pay for commodities via bank checks. So the accounting unit of the central medical store cannot tell at the time they receive these checks if the health facilities have sufficient funds in the accounts. So eventually, when they go to the banks to cash the checks, they get notified that the health facilities don't have sufficient funds and the checks get bounced. Next slide, please. So due to the challenges we just described, like Chema mentioned, i+solutions and Unchain, our blockchain partner, we had a consultative meeting with the National Product Supply Chain Management Program. The aim of the meeting was to discuss how some of these challenges can be addressed using the blockchain technology. And the key outcome of that meeting was that the blockchain should be piloted in the Kano State DRF. And the aim was to test the viability of blockchain technology in the medicine supply chain. And at the end of the pilot, we were able to demonstrate 3 key things. Number 1 was that with the blockchain technology, we can link and secure ordering and payments for essential medicines. And we can also shorten the procurement process and provide transparency. And then finally, that with the blockchain technology, we can integrate parallel systems and provide real-time end-to-end data visibility. I would hand over at this point to our colleague at Unchain to provide more insights into the blockchain technology. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Obina, and everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Jelle van der Ploeg from Unchain. And in the next few minutes, I will give you a short introduction in blockchain for business and what the benefits are for using it in the supply chain. So many of you might know blockchain for its most successful and actually first use case, which is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is recently just about 10 years old. Now, for the past 7 years or so, many talented technologists and scientists have also been focusing on how can we use this technology and apply it to business use cases. So today in 2020, it is now proven and rather widely accepted that blockchain as a technology allows for business networks and value chains to do business and transactions with each other in a more trusted and efficient manner. And at the basis of this lie 4 key characteristics, which we'll go over now. So the first one is a shared ledger. So just like in common bookkeeping, a blockchain works with a ledger in which we store each individual transaction. In the world of blockchain, a transaction can be the exchange of money, but it could also be the exchange of a document. So think of a procurement order or the acceptance of a shipment or an invoice, for instance. So each party involved in a network keeps its own copy of this particular ledger. And in that sense, we share it. So as soon as a new transaction is added, so a new invoice is sent or a new order is sent on a network, it is automatically added to the ledgers of all the involved parties. So the sharing of this transactional data can be done in a clever way in which the content of the transaction can remain confidential, even though we, and that we keep the parties involved private, so that it suffices with all the business requirements we would have here. So the second key characteristic is the immutable chain of transactions. That is, immutable is a rather difficult word, but in fact, it just means that it's unchangeable. So when a transaction is sent to this shared ledger, for instance, the receiving of an order by company A, it is put in a block together with other transactions. This block is then linked to a previous block. And that in a way, that's also where the word comes from, blockchain. So it's literally linking of different blocks. Once a block is added to this chain, the contents of it cannot be changed anymore. So it's virtually impossible to change both the sender of the content of the transaction and the transaction itself. So this is why we speak of an immutable chain of transactions. So because of this characteristic, it becomes possible to exchange value, something that was first, at least in the digital world, impossible to do. But now we can actually transfer money in a way that it is reliable and trustworthy. So that brings us to the third point, that is consensus. So when different organizations in a business network send transactions to the shared ledger, these transactions are checked and agreed upon as valid or invalid. Or you could say notarized. It's pretty similar to in how in our real world we have a notary that puts a stamp on a transaction. So, for example, in the validity of a transaction, it is checked that the sender actually owns or can create the goods that he wants to send, that he has not already sent it to somebody else. So in a modern blockchain-based business network, we can have a flexible way to appoint who notarizes these transactions and who gets to say within the network what transaction is valid or not, so that we can, in the best way, make this new digital network resemble what we actually have in real world. Lastly, we have smart contracts. So traditionally, contracts that we use practically every day in businesses already, they are really to make sure that a transaction that we do, so the exchange of goods and services, fulfill a certain amount of business rules. And these business rules, we can now also really conditions to a transaction, we can also digitalize in the form of a smart contract. So similar rules we can apply to the transaction happening on a blockchain, and these rules will be taken into account as we come to an agreement to the validity of the transaction. So in this consensus part that we just spoke about. So think of these rules in the terms of if X, then Y. For example, if organization A wants to order medicine, it requires to have the amount of cash required that is equal to the amount that it wants to order, and possibly already send 50% of that cash when it orders it. So next to these smart contracts being a set of business rules that we apply to the transaction, they can also help us in making business processes more efficient because they can trigger events. An example of that, going back to the example I just gave, if in the order of organization A for the medicine, it came through successfully, it can automatically trigger the supplier's warehouse to start picking the order. So basically to prepare the medicine to be sent to the organization. Okay, so that was quite a bit of information for those, just those 4 characteristics. So now we're gonna see how we would apply these 4 characteristics in the supply chain. And for that, we can go to the next slide, please. So very much simplified, in the medicine supply chain, we look at a distribution path from a manufacturer to a central distribution center to increasingly smaller distribution centers to end up in a healthcare facility where a doctor or a nurse can actually help it to use it to help a patient. In each step along this way, goods are passed from A to B and documents are being sent back and forth. So think about invoices, orders, and so on. And in the end, money is exchanging hands as well. So very much simplified, in a supply chain, we have a flow of goods, a flow of documents, and a flow of money. By digitally transforming these flows, we can increase the efficiency across the supply chain. So remember that the supply chain, the smart contracts can trigger events. So if we create a smart contract for the delivery of medicine from A to B, we can automatically look up the related invoice and perform the payment as soon as B, so company B, has informed the blockchain network that it has received the goods. So moreover, by linking the flow of physical goods, so the actual medicine, with transactional data, being the invoices or orders and basically the documents around shipments, and putting these on the shared ledger of the blockchain network, we can greatly reduce the need for reconciliation. So we can start matching what happens physically with what happens in terms of documents that are being sent back and forth. And this will greatly help us with what we need to do in terms of bookkeeping and auditing. Now, when we have all these organizations in a supply chain registering their documents, their shipments, and their payments, the shared ledger of a blockchain network can provide a backbone of real-time and reliable information to perform analytics on. For instance, by analyzing the flow of goods and orders, we can improve inventory management, and we can even start looking at preventing medicine counterfeiting or diversion of medicine. So we can analyze where, for instance, in the supply chain, we see leakage. So currently, we exchange data in a value chain through proprietary systems like EDI, it's called, which often comes with quite a hefty license fee. Luckily, most blockchain protocols that we are using are open source, which means that you're not required to have a commercial license for them. This makes it easier to have a business network to use one and the same standardized way to share data. So next to that, a lot of great standardization bodies have been working on open standards that are also applicable to what we do on these blockchain networks, so how we exchange data on these blockchain networks. And especially in medicine, GS1 is a prime example of this. So although the software to run on a blockchain network comes free of charge, there is a cost of decentralization of this trust that we build up by putting everything on this shared ledger and having consensus on it and having it registered in an unchangeable way. And this is mainly in the fact that we have to basically run multiple of these ledgers. So where we have a central application that would only require one time this ledger. So we basically duplicate these processes. The other aspect is that sometimes it's pretty difficult to form a network and to come to an agreement on how the governance of a network should work. However, in this case, for a rather unified supply chain, it works really well. So in my final slide, we will present the key reasons why we applied blockchain, particularly in this case, and what the benefits are for this particular case. So can we have the next slide, please? Yes. So based on the shared ledger and the transactions coming in near real time, we can actively monitor for over and understock at the healthcare facilities themselves. So really at the end of this large, almost you can imagine it as a tree. At the leaves of the tree, we can see what the inventory is of particular medicine. Therefore, we can improve the inventory management. Secondly, we're able to perform fast and secure payments. So because we have an immutable chain, we can actually start exchanging value. We can start digitizing these payments as well. And with a click on the button of the mobile app that we've created, a transaction is sent to the blockchain, approving the invoice and directly updating the account balances. Obina will tell you a bit more about that in a moment. So next, when a shipment arrives and it is accepted, also the inventory is automatically updated. All of the organizations that are exchanging data in this standardized format that we've created, they do this based on open source technology, again, which is a more inexpensive way to perform this. And we were able to directly integrate this with their existing business applications as well. So the amount of change needed for them was minimal. Last but not least, we're able to provide traceability of goods from the central medical store all the way to the last mile healthcare facilities, so we can prevent medicine falsification and track potential diversion. So with all this in mind, I will hand over to Obina now. In case of any questions on these slides, I'm looking forward to hearing them at the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Yala, for that presentation. So this picture shows a conceptual view of the application of the blockchain in the medicine supply chain. In a typical medicine supply chain, there are different levels and multiple stakeholders are involved in the movement of the medicines from the medicine suppliers to the patients. And for instance, the medicines can move from the supplier to a national-owned central medical store, from the central medical store through a transport service provider to a zonal or a state warehouse. And from that state or zonal warehouse through another transport service provider through to a service delivery point, and eventually to the patients. Now, these different levels and the multiple stakeholders involved in this movement typically use different information management systems, which are not linked to each other in any way. As a result of this, it's impossible to have a full overview of the medicine supply chain. And that's where the blockchain technology comes in. With the blockchain technology, we can integrate the existing systems of these various levels and the various stakeholders involved in the medicine supply chain. The blockchain can be used to provide a standardized and a secured means for these stakeholders to share information, and this will enable a full overview of the medicine supply chain. Now, with the front-end control tower, these relevant stakeholders can actually have access to the data, and we can enable end-to-end real-time data visibility without the need for the existing systems to be replaced. Next slide, please. So in this section, we will talk about how we were able to set up blockchain pilots. Next slide. Okay, so like Chema mentioned, we conducted the blockchain pilot in Kano State Drug Revolving Fund, and the objective was to show end-to-end real-time data visibility, and also to show how the blockchain can be used to provide an efficient and secure and fast payment for medicines. Next slide, please. So the pilot was conducted in Kano State, which is a state in northwestern Nigeria, and 2 health facilities were part of this pilot. The first one, which is Mohamedou Abdullahi Wase Teaching Hospital, is a tertiary teaching hospital in Kano State. And because we wanted to keep the scope of the pilot a bit small, because the aim was to show that the blockchain can work in the medicine supply chain, we decided to use just 1 unit within this tertiary hospital. So we used the accident and emergency units. And we also used Wagwarawa Primary Healthcare Center, which is the primary healthcare center in the state capital. We also used a distribution center, and that's the central medical store located in the state capital. Next slide, please. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we kept the scope of the pilot small, and for that, we decided to use just 2 health commodities for the pilot, and that's the normal saline and paracetamol syrup. Next slide, please. So this picture summarizes the procurement process in Kano State's DROF. So as a first step, the staff of the health facility physically visits the central medical store with a list of commodities to be procured. In step 2, this list is entered into M-Supply, which is the tool used for inventory control at that level. So as it is entered into M-Supply, an invoice is generated using M-Supply. And this invoice is also returned by staff of the health center to the health center. In step 3, this invoice, in addition to a request for procurement, is sent to the Health Facility Management Committee. The Health Facility Management Committee is a group of about 3 to 4 persons who provide operational oversight in the activities of the health facility. They are also responsible for approving a request for procurement. And a member of this committee has to be someone resident in that community where the health facility is located for accountability purposes. So in step 4, the Health Facility Management Committee approves the request for procurement and issues a check to the staff of the health center. So in step 5, this check is returned to the accounting unit of the central medical store. And in step 6, a receipt is issued to the health facility, which they take to the central medical store to pick up their commodities. In step 7, the commodities are then transported to the health facility. Like I mentioned earlier, this entire process takes about 3 to 6 days, depending on the availability of members of the health facility committee to approve the procurement and endorse the check, or the proximity of the health facility to the central medical store. Also, the issue of bounce check is common because, like I mentioned earlier, when they present these checks to the accounting units, they can't tell at that point if they have sufficient funds in their account to conduct that particular procurement. So when they eventually get to the banks to cash in the checks, they now realize that that procurement cannot be concluded. But at that point, the health facilities have already received the product. So this is a common issue they experience in the existing system. Next slide, please. So with the blockchain technology, we're able to simplify the procurement process and payment for the commodities. So in the solution or in the intervention we came up with, as a first step, the list is also sent to the central medical store. Then in step 2, this list is entered into M-Supply, an invoice is generated and uploaded into the blockchain technology. As soon as this invoice is uploaded into the blockchain, members of the health facility management committee, using a mobile application on a mobile phone, can review this invoice. Now, they have 2 options here. They could decide to reject the invoice or approve the invoice, which means they are approving the payment. So in step 3, should they decide to approve the payment, automatically the funds are transferred from the account of the health facility to that of the DMCSA Central Medical Store with the aid of the blockchain technology. So in step 4, a receipt is issued to the health facility, and in step 5, pick up the commodities and transport it to their health center. So this entire process occurs within 24 hours, and it eliminates the process of issuing and collecting checks and the risk of bounced checks. Next slide, please. So it is very important to note that an account was created for each participating service delivery point in this pilot. So the 2 health centers had an account, including the central medical store. So each account was linked to the blockchain network, and payment was automatically initiated when an invoice was approved by the health facility management committee. Next slide, please. So essentially, we developed 2 solutions for this pilot. We came up with a mobile application. So like I mentioned earlier, as soon as the invoice from the central store is uploaded into the blockchain technology, the members of the health facility management committee can review this invoice and decide to either approve procurement or reject the procurement. So this invoice shows all the commodities in the invoice. It shows the unit cost of each commodity. It shows the quantity of each commodity to be procured. It shows the total cost of each commodity and the total cost of the entire procurement. So the mobile application was also used by the health facilities to confirm receipt of commodities from the central store. That transaction is recorded on the blockchain network, and that serves as proof of delivery to the health facility. And also, the mobile application was used by the health facilities to enter consumption data in real time. So as soon as commodities are dispensed to patients, that transaction is recorded in real time using the mobile application. Next slide, please. So we also came up with a front-end web application. So with the front-end web application, relevant stakeholders in the states, including the logistics management coordinating units, the State Ministry of Health, the Primary Healthcare Development Agency, and other relevant stakeholders in the DRF, they had real-time data visibility in the movement of the commodities from the central medical store to the main store of each health center, and from the main store of each health center to the respective units or dispensaries within a particular health center. So with the front-end web application, they could see the quantity of each commodity received and issued in real time in the exact time of each transaction. Next slide, please. So yeah, now we will discuss the results of the pilots. Next slide, please. So one thing we were able to achieve was that we significantly reduced the length of procurements. Like I mentioned earlier, in the existing system, it took about 3 to 6 days to conclude procurements. But with the blockchain technology, we were able to carry out this entire process within 24 hours. Also, the issue of bounced checks were eliminated because there was no need for members of the health facility management committee to sign checks, to transport the checks back to the central store. Also, we're able to provide real-time end-to-end data visibility in the movement of commodities. If you remember when Choma was going through the background, the information system that they currently have is paper-based, and as a result, they are unable to track movement of commodities. They are unable to have real-time end-to-end data visibility. So we were able to achieve this using the blockchain technology. Next slide, please. So after the pilots, we conducted a survey to get feedback from the users of the solution. And from this chart, you can see the feedback we got from the users, but I'm going to highlight about 3 points here. So about 63% of the participants, they strongly agree that the solution will improve their current way of working. And another 25% strongly agree that they could combine participating in the pilots with their daily task. However, about 12% said they couldn't combine participating in the pilots with their daily tasks. Now, this was because the pilot was more of a shadow operation, and they still continued entering data on their paper-based systems because we didn't want to disrupt the system completely at the end of the pilots. So yes, 12% felt they were not able to enter the data on their paper-based system and also track using the mobile application. So another 63% of the participants said it was easy to get familiar with the solution. Yeah, so next slide, please. So with the blockchain technology, we were able to improve tracking and tracing and real-time end-to-end visibility in the movement of medicines from the central store to the main store of the health facility, and also to the different units within the health facility. A very important advantage the blockchain has is the capability to integrate with existing IT systems. So this means that the existing systems don't necessarily have to be removed. The existing systems can remain, and the blockchain technology can be used to integrate these systems. And with the blockchain technology, we can have a full overview of the medicine supply chain, like we were able to demonstrate in the Kano State DROF. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned earlier, we conducted a survey at the end of the pilot to get feedback from the users of the solution. And the Deputy Director of Pharmaceutical Services in the tertiary teaching hospital that participated in this pilot said that the solution was very simple to operate, yet highly technical, and will make the procurement process simpler, more precise, and time-consuming. So this marks the end of the presentation. I would like to thank you all, and I think we will move to the next section, which is the Q&A.
Yeah, this is Unchain. Thank you, Obina. Thank you, Jelle and Choma, for presenting. We've got 2 questions in the chat now, and if people want to ask more, they can. Oh, there's a 3rd one coming in. I'd like to give the word to Junaido Adamu Barde, because he has a question that is related to, well, I think the last slide. So could you ask your question yourself? And maybe unmute Junaido.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Junaido. Just ask your question.
Oh, great, thank you. So my question is regarding the scope of the pilot, looking at Kano State that has over 1,000 health facilities, and with the rural nature of the state, only 7 of the 44 local governments are within the metropolitan. Most of them are, in the rural areas, and some of them have difficult GSM and internet connectivity. So the question is, do you think the result of the pilot is enough to inform statewide scale-up, especially looking at the scope of the supplies in the state and also the number of health facilities? Over.
Yeah, thank you, Inaibu. Obina, maybe you can start.
Okay, yes, thank you very much for that question. Like we mentioned earlier, this was the first phase of the pilot, and the aim was to see if the blockchain can actually be used in the medicine supply chain. Moving to the next phase of the pilot, we would have to also explore using 2G technology for the health, for areas that don't have good internet connectivity. So the next phase of the pilot too, more health facilities will be incorporated, and also more drugs will also be incorporated. So at this point, we may not categorically say that it is good enough to make informed decisions with this, but the aim of the pilot was achieved. And in the next phase of the pilot, we'll be able to get more insight into what the blockchain can do.
Okay, thank you very much, Obina. We also have Jasper Klapwijk, sorry, who asked a question. Could we unmute Jasper, and could you ask your question, please? To Jelle, I believe.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, and, it's also a general question, but yes, I did. The question did come up after when Jelle was presenting. My question, it's also a little bit related to the third question, to get a sense for the cost, because I'm actually already quite impressed with a, say, 5 or 6 day procurement period in some locations in Africa. So I'm trying to get a sense of what needs to be in place before you can actually consider to look at a blockchain solution without necessarily having to revamp the entire logistical system for medicine.
Yeah, thank you, Jasper. And I'm sure that Obina has some additional comments on this in a moment about how we also, while doing this, transform paper-based processes to digital processes. However, where these processes are already digital, so in this case it was M-Supply being used by zonal warehouses, we were able to very pragmatically connect with these systems by taking what they have in there and exporting it, and being able to upload that to our blockchain network in a reliable way. This can go much further, and we can digitize this, automate this even further if we would want to. But it really depends on the situation on the ground. Yeah. No, Obina, do you have any additional comments on this one?
No, I don't have comments on this one. No.
Yeah, and maybe good to add is that the technology Unchain has developed is particularly positioned as a kind of middleware in layman's terms between existing systems and, let's say, the control tower. So it is indeed developed to easily integrate existing systems and get the data out of those, so you don't need to rebuild everything, which we believe is not a sustainable solution. There are already many systems running. What we lack is end-to-end visibility, and I think this is perfectly suited to connect all these different systems.
Absolutely.
Jasper, did that answer your question? He's maybe already muted.
Sorry, yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, then Fried Enting asked a question about a ballpark figure. Fried, you want to explain your question a little bit?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, thanks for this very interesting webinar. My question is, okay, you started a pilot. Yeah, can you give me an indication of a ballpark figure of what are the implementation costs? Yeah, is it let's say 10,000 euros, or are we talking about more or less? It's a little bit that I would like to get a feeling of. Yeah, what are the costs incurred in this implementation of this pilot?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question, and since it's numbers, CEO, I'm also quite involved in this pilot. Yeah, I think most of the costs are actually not in technology. Most of the costs are in stakeholder engagement, and training of people. We did provide the smartphones as well, because they didn't have these simple smartphones. So the pilot costs about $100,000, so it's still significant, but I would say technology, if you scale it up, we already made a figure to scale it up to the whole state of Kano. And then you're talking about 2 to 3 million, but that's including all the cost, all the hardware, software,
Yeah, of course,
training, and that could be recouped by having a more efficient supply chain. So yeah, compared to, I would say, other systems, it is cheaper in a way because you don't need to implement all the new systems. You make use of the existing systems.
Yeah. Okay. Clear. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. We have another question from Christine Oyewo. Could you ask your question yourself, please?
Okay. Now, I want to ask Obina a question. How many people are usually needed to approve the payment process as per the pilot that you did? Because my own opinion about approving payments, whether it's pre or post in government systems, is that it involves more than one person. It involves more than one hierarchy. So I would like to know the answer to that question. You also mentioned that you use GS1 standards. In which way do you use them? So I just like to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe Obina, you can answer the first one.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much for the question. So in the current system, they have about 3 to 4 persons that have to sign a check for procurement. But for our solution, we give the funds to about 2 persons to review the invoice using the mobile phone and also approve payments. So we use 2 persons.
Yeah, and for GS1, Jelle, maybe you want to say something about it?
Yeah. Let me. So GS1 basically does two things. It makes it possible to uniquely identify a batch of medicine. It's doing quite some front-running work on that. Plus, it comes with a very widely used and widely adopted way to like a data format that is easily exchanged between different organizations. Think about article numbers, locations, etc. So it's a uniform way to exchange data. So that the message that everybody understands the message, the language that you speak, essentially. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're
Thanks.
running a little bit over time, but let's have one last question from Unaidu. Unaidu, if you're okay, I read it. So is the blockchain solution likely to replace the M-Supply and other LMIS systems in the States? And if yes, then how cheap is it like to be? I would say the answer is theoretically it is possible, but we don't want to replace existing systems. So where there were no systems like paper-based systems, we introduced the app. So, and it can be any app. So again, if there are existing apps or other apps, we want to integrate all systems that are in the supply chain. That's our main goal, to create end-to-end visibility. And we are not there to replace any existing system unless that system needs to be replaced, of course. In this case, M-Supply worked perfectly well, but we didn't have anything in the health facilities. So yeah, thank you all. I'm going to hand back to Anouk and Annette, because I think we're through the time. Thank you all for asking your questions, and Obina and Jelle for answering.
Yes, Ed, thank you very much. Obina, Choma, Jelle, thank you very much for presenting. We have in fact come to the end of the presentation, and we really hope that you've had an interesting time with us. We will share with you the presentation, of course, like we promised at the beginning. And as you can see on the last slide, you'll find Obina's contact details, should you have any more questions or want to know more about the blockchain technology. So this was our last webinar in the series. So we'd like to thank you all for joining us. And well, please keep following us on Twitter and LinkedIn. And we hope to see you again soon. So thanks for joining and have a good afternoon. Any questions that are remaining that haven't been answered will be answered by email, like we said before. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. Jelle, are you staying on the line for a moment? And Choma and Obina as well, and Anouk?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Everybody else has left, so we can all unmute.
Yeah.
And Ed has gone. That's a pity.
Yeah.
Would have liked to include him in the... I'll stop sharing. Well, that went very well. Well done.
Very
Excellent.
nice.
Yes,
Yes.
excellent.
And nice questions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Yeah. What do you think yourselves?
I think a lot of people are interested in hearing more about this. The questions kept coming, and if we had continued with more questions, would definitely, you know. So I think it's interesting to know that someone from the DRC also has a question, and would have been nice to have spoken, you know, but all the same, it shows a lot of interest about, you know, the blockchain. Yeah.
Yeah. Obina, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it went well. I had a little issue connecting earlier. My webcam on my phone, sorry, on my laptop is bad, so I didn't want to use it for this activity, so I borrowed a computer from my friend. So maybe that's why you didn't see my name.
Exactly, this name.
I
You
was
were
a
there
bit
all the
stressed.
time.
I was there waiting.
You were there all the time. I saw this name coming in really early, you know, it was not even 10 to 3. So, but I didn't know it was you.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
And when Shioma was presenting, I didn't saw your name anymore. And I texted her and I'm like, oh, Obina is not in the call anymore.
Oh my God, I didn't even get that text. Did you?
Yeah, I was a bit stressed. But
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So I connected with my phone, and when you eventually let me in here, I just decided to disconnect with the phone.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
sorry about that. It went well.
No, no problem at all. I mean, we could hear you very well. We didn't have any hiccups during the presentation, so that was great. What about you, Jelle? What's your view?
Very happy with it, how it went. I think it was overall a great webinar, great story that we told, and especially once the questions started coming in the end, they started adding up. So especially the interest was great to see, and yeah, very happy that we could play a role in that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Anouk,
yeah, I think there were 2 more questions, but I will send them by email, and then if you can answer them, Jelle and Obina, that would be great. Then we can include it in the thank you mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. How many participants did we have in all?
23.
23, okay.
Yeah.
That's basically what we've seen the whole time, right?
Yeah, around 20.
Yeah,
but
between 20 and 30.
The first time we had like 90 participants, and then or applications, and then there were like 18 participants, and now it was around 23. So it was I think good.
Yeah.
And better 23 interested persons than 19 who are reading something else with a paper. One webinar we had a person and he was sitting like this with this reading his paper in front of with this video.
Okay, Annette and Anouk, you guys did a great job. Annette said,
thank you.
Thanks.
Every webinar, you know, there's this calmness, you know, the introduction calms not just the presenters, but also those listening. And then Anouk, whatever you were doing background, you did a fantastic job because everything.
Thanks.
Yeah, really. The organization was really great, Anouk. The
Yes.
planning, the organization, you really kept everybody with it. So
Yeah.
Thank you. Also to you, Annette, because you were also part of it.
good teamwork between us
Yeah.
and the whole TCP team, I have to say. Also with the other webinars. It was really, really fun to do.
Yeah.
So whenever we have a new topic, now we're really, you know, we're into the webinars now. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Ed is calling me.
Oh.
Hold on. Hi, Ed.
Ja?
Ja, ik zit nog steeds in de meeting. We zitten nog even na te babbelen.
Ja.
Maar
Oké, nou, dan ga ik niet deelnemen. Ik ga lekker vakantie vieren, maar ik vond het wel goed gaan.
Ja, vond je het goed gaan? Ik heb je op de speaker gezet, dus ik denk dat ze je kunnen horen.
Ja.
Ja, ik vond het heel goed gaan, ja. Zit Opina er ook in, of niet?
Ja, Obina, Choma, Jelle, Anouk en ik zijn nog allemaal hier.
Okay, well, I thought it went very well, so congratulations, given all the short notices, and even Obina, we could see you, so yeah, I found it very well presented, so thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ed.
Ed.
So
Thanks,
enjoy.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
So I will also send you the names of the participants, and maybe there are some names you recognize and you want to follow up yourself. Please let us know, then we will not send them the general email.
Okay.
Yes, because what we're going to do now is send the presentation and the answers to the remaining questions. And I think next week, but Anouk and I, we still have to decide on it. We would like to send to all the participants of all 6 webinars an email to get some feedback from them, because we haven't done that really so far. But if there are people among the participants that you would prefer to get in touch with yourself to ask for feedback or whatever, because he's a contact of yours or because it's interesting, you know, you have a good reason to engage with them, then just let us know and we'll not include them in that one.
Yeah, I think a personal email is always better than a general email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you know the person yourself, then it's better to send a personal email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will send you the names.
Okay.
Okay, great. So thanks a lot.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Jelle, for joining.
yes,
Thanks,
Jelle, thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you too. Thanks again. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. And very happy to work with you, Opina and Choma as well. We might actually, the last week of November, we're organizing a webinar as well. And also this is something that we want to do regularly. So we might, I might send an email about a guest appearance at some point, if that's possible.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, and let us know about it, Jelle, because we can do some promotion for you as well via our LinkedIn channel or via Twitter.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah, I will keep you updated on it. Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Have a nice evening. Doeg, Anouk.